All right, everybody. Well, I tell you, after that game today, that was definitely one to write home about. That was an ending that was as crazy as any ending that I might have seen. We talked a little bit at the end of that game about whether I should have allowed Kling to potentially steal second or not. I'm going to stand by my decision there, but I can definitely see how you might want to second guess it. That's one of those questions that comes up in these contexts of these games. And by the way, it's also one of the reasons why I prefer to play these sort of card and dice type games where you can easily make strategic decisions on your own. There was a little bit of comment in the comment section a couple of days ago, I believe it was, about how somebody was upset about this and doesn't like playing games against themselves and would rather have the computer play on autoplay. I suppose that's nice, though. If this game were autoplayed, we would have missed out on a great one. And I do think that it's really interesting to look at sort of the general strategies. It's interesting to look at situations in which you can call for, maybe not stealing in that instance and sort of see what difference it would have made. In this particular case, the Cubs would have had runners on at first and third with 2 men out. And it very well might have allowed, Sheckard would have come up next. And take a quick look at his card. He has another one of these really, really nice-looking hitters cards. The Cubs probably could have tied this game, maybe even won it with runners on at first and third. I probably, though, would have left Beebe in the ball game, and that's the topic for today. Do you leave the guy in or do you take him out is the question. And that's one of those things we need to look at with these games. Now, we're going to do this a little bit different than I normally would, because normally I would have spent the time to actually do a bunch of research on this and show you something interesting. Instead, we're going to talk about how this works in the game itself, right? The idea behind Skeetersoft, behind NPIII, is that you really want to play this game as if you were playing a game of baseball yourself. You don't want to play what they call APBA ball. In other words, you don't really want to come in and be like, oh, well, this is the winning combination or the winning thing or the thing that I can see would be better in this situation, right? Like, oh, BB's a D now, so we're going to take him out right away and put in a different pitcher. The truth about this is that for Fred Beebe to get whatever his statistics were in 1908, and I don't know off the top of my head, I'm not that smart. For him to get the statistics to turn out right, we need to be willing to let him stay in situations in which he probably would stay in real life. Now, I actually don't have StatHead right now. I'd have to go back and probably get another free trial if I wanted to look at it again. But I'll tell you, if you fire it up for 1908 and look at the box scores that we do have and look at the information that we do have in these games, I think you'll find that in many cases in this type of situation, the pitcher would stay in. Right, it's got a lot to do with the more traditional way of looking at baseball. Just a second. All right, sorry, got a bunch of wires that the robot vacuum's running into. It's sort of the more traditional way of looking at baseball history that was common at the time. This is one of the things, right, that meaning I don't mean necessarily to disparage anybody, but this is one of the things that drives me nuts when I enter into conversations with people about stuff like the history of baseball and the right way to look at it and the proper way to look at sabermetrics and things like that. If you look at the history of baseball, if you look at 1908 or heaven forbid like 1900 or 1901 from modern lenses, you'll look at this and say, oh, this is so primitive. They don't know exactly what they're doing. They don't know what's going on. The truth is, though, if those who studied this and who were so disparaging towards it would actually take the time to go look through these situations, to play these games out and to understand what's really happening, you come to more or less an understanding of what is really going on and why certain things happen the way that they did, right? It was common at that time still for pitchers to stay in to throw complete games, even if they were losing the ball game. It was not quite as common to replace pitchers with pinch hitters, in part because you don't necessarily have a whole bunch of great guys on your bench. And, of course, they're not going to let me look at the bench here for the Cardinals to show you. This is one of the places where it's kind of unfortunate. I think what I have to do here is go up and create a new game. And then we can go take a look here at, whatever the Cardinals would potentially have on the bench. So, I mean, I think it's defaulted back to the default schedule or the default lineup and all that stuff. So whatever. The Cardinals didn't exactly have a whole bunch of great hitters on the bench if they were going to take Beebe out. And they definitely don't have a whole bunch of pitchers who are as good as Beebe theoretically. But, of course, because of the fatigue system, you could put maybe somebody in. And so, I mean, theoretically, we probably put like Art Fromm in. I don't know. I'd have to go back and look and see if I have him in the rotation or not. I can't remember. It's possible that I do. Ed Carger could probably go in. Stoney McGlynn might have been able to go in. Slim Sally might have been able to go in. One of these guys probably would have ended up going in for that last 1 or 2 outs. But the truth is, with a 4-1 lead and even a 4-2 lead there near the end of the game, I mean, you're probably still not going to take the guy out. You're going to try to let him finish the thing that he started and figure that you can get just that little bit extra out of him. And that's really the way that you have to play the game. If you want to have realistic statistics and have things happen the way that they did in real life, you do have to pay attention to those types of strategic decisions, right? It's not only good for you in terms of strategy, or in terms of strategy, in terms of making sure the stats come out right, it's good for you in understanding as well exactly why the game was played the way that it was played. One thing that I worry about is that we don't see a whole lot of curiosity among people these days as to the older days of baseball. There was a different topic that I was thinking about posting today, and this stupid vacuum is going to drive me nuts. There was a different topic I was thinking about posting today, which we'll probably have to wait for another day, in which I've seen a lot of discussion, once again, among the usual suspects about how baseball doesn't really count before whatever year they come up with, 1947, or maybe it's sometime in the 60s or sometime in the 70s, or 2001, or whatever arbitrary year we've decided is when the game of baseball actually begins. I mean, it's foolishness. It's absolute folly. It means that you're ignoring most of the history of baseball. And one of the problems that you have with this is that the curiosity goes away. So instead of asking questions like, oh, you know, this is interesting, in 1908 there was this completely different approach to offense and everybody was playing small ball. Is it true that everybody was an idiot, or was there some reason for this? Is there some sort of environment going on that encouraged teams to make this type of strategic move and strategic decision? I would argue that if you spend the time to actually play the games and look into what's going on, you would see very easily that there was something that was pushing this. And especially that if you know that pitching is very, very good and that your chances of getting a hit aren't that great, you're more likely to bunt. You're more likely to try to call and hit and run and try to force something into happening. And that would explain, you know, sort of the results that you see historically from those seasons, right? I would even go as far as to say that you're not really qualified to comment much on these games and the game at that time unless you've actually gone through and done not just an automatic simulation, but played it out yourself and try to understand it for what it really is. I know it's a heretical point of view, but I do think that there really is a lot of value added from these simulations, and that there is a lot to them and a lot of reasons to continue to play with them. Even games that we consider to be somewhat primitive, such as NPIII, I would say that there's a lot of good that comes from it, a lot of good understanding that comes from it, and that we should take it seriously. It doesn't matter that it doesn't have quite the same graphical interface as OOTP or even the pitch-by-pitch mode. What we care about most is how good a job does it do of actually modeling and simulating baseball, even if it's in a very basic sense. I would say it does a pretty good job, and you can let me know what you think about that. Anyway, so there you have it. If you're doing your own season, especially a dead ball era season, keep that in mind. Leave your pitcher in. That's what they would have done in real life. Don't try to necessarily do all sorts of modern-day management, not only because it might not work, but because you don't learn anything that way. Talk with you a little bit more tomorrow about something else. We'll see you then. Bye.